Welcome to RawSportsCast. My name is Scott Harrigan, and today I've a special guest I'm looking forward to. We have Scotty, the Bulldog Olson. Champ, how you doing today, bud?
Oh, I'm just doing awesome, Scott. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Very excited to be talking to you today.
Good stuff. Well, I appreciate it. That's good. So, I mean, you had a great career. What is it? 40 fights, 34 wins, 25 KOs, a couple losses, and a few draws.
Yes.
Yeah.
There were a couple losses, but I had one draw that I thought I lost for sure, and it made up for the other losses that I thought I had won.
That's the way that works. So, boxing, that's the game in boxing. You never want to leave it in the judge's hands, do you? Like you just want to kind of finish it and leave no doubt.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. When you're in there, and you're battling, you prepare and you battle hard against another guy, but you find out you're really battling the people that are outside sitting down on the ring apron, making judgments based on your performance, and sometimes they're pretty whack. So
yeah, they kind of now. Do the judges? Did they box or what? Are they just like a bunch of punters sitting on the sideline thinking they know?
some there are some that have boxed, but for the most part, like the commission and then gets them, and they're like professional people. Typically, they could be a police officer, or they could be lawyers and different things, doctors.
Because they're upstanding people. Any lawyer?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just they're making tremendously big decisions based on your whole career.
Yeah.
Maybe not, knowing, not having been a fighter before.
Yeah.
So I'm partially in agreement with it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Now, I just found this out that we might have a connection, and this goes back a long time ago. And I'm going to just rattle your
Okay.
memory bank here. Do
Yes.
you remember a guy by the name of Greg Mace?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so
Goodness sakes.
my partner in RawSportsCast, Bulldog, is Howie Mace, which is Greg's nephew. And yeah, he told me an amazing story. I just howled. Where you were the promoter for, what was it? What was that box thing, or what was Instabox?
Yeah, they had me doing a little bit of PR work for them at Instabox.
Yeah,
Boxing company. Yeah, cardboard box company.
awesome,
Great people.
right? So he tells me that you joined them in Ontario, California, to go to a drag racing thing, and you were staying at the Marriott Hotel, but you were training. And these boys were just like swilling in the bar and stuff like that. And he said, we're trying to get you to have a few and stuff like that. And but it was like you were
too close to the fight.
Exactly. So there you go. Like 2 degrees of separation. My partner and you worked that long ago. So small world, eh?
Absolutely. It's just nice to hear stories. Sometimes being a fighter and my retention, long term, short term. Sometimes that I have my issues. So
yeah,
bringing when you brought back that memory, it's nice because I may not vividly remember certain parts of it, but
yeah.
But it sure is nice for me to hear.
Oh,
Really.
that's awesome, and that's exactly why I brought it up. And now I'm glad you mentioned that, and I wonder if you want to talk about this.
Yeah.
The morning of January 18th, that's a day that'll obviously stick out in your life for forever. You suffered a very severe heart attack. Does that, first of all, you look great. What are the effects? What are the effects afterwards of that?
Wow, that's a very good question. Yeah, that so what ended up happening, it was a cardiac arrest. So my heart's or my I had a heart attack that and then my heart stopped. So having it was a cardiac arrest situation. So they put me in a medically induced coma for a few days. They had a very hard time getting my pulse back originally before I got to the hospital, but they get a little bit of a heartbeat. Somehow I managed to hang in there. They didn't think they weren't so sure I was going to come out and come out of the coma, and if I did come out, what condition I would be in.
Right, because of the oxygen, the lack of oxygen that was for that. Like, now, didn't your wife perform CPR and like it saved your life?
She did. I'm indebted to her. I hear it quite often, actually. But
oh, she brings it up. She reminds you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So she's like a rock star.
No
I
kidding.
having a rock star quality person, and really did her best. And plus, my kids were home at the time too, so I'm wedged between the bathtub and the toilet, and they're trying to drag me out and give me CPR. So, but cognitively, with the lack of oxygen that I had, cognitively, I'm a little bit slower than I was, and my long term memory is still pretty darn good. It's that short term memory that I have a really hard time with. So those are things that I'm on certain medications to help me with my mood swings, which hey, what? Ooh, a fighter has mood swings.
Imagine that, eh? No,
Yeah.
do concussions, like when you were fighting and I was playing sports and relatively in the same years, when you got your bell rung, it was called you got your bell rung. It was, you seen some stars, you were a little woozy, you this, but certainly the last thing you thought of was, can you kind of explain, like, you were known for your punch, right? Like, I mean, like you would put guys out. When you got your bell rung, and you must have,
Yes.
do you just remember, like, whoa, that was something, or you certainly didn't think about 30 years down the road how this is going to affect you?
No. Back then, telling there are certain symptoms like maybe feeling like you're throwing up, or you can have, of course, the your eyes can be sensitive to light. There can be a number of things that can happen, but telling your trainer or your manager after a fight that you had some symptoms, it was just it was kind of frowned upon. You never brought up
It's a
anything,
weakness.
any sort of weakness. Exactly. So yeah, the
Yeah.
weakness we just didn't cover. But I've had some fights where I got pushed or knocked down. I'm still not sure, but I chances are I was knocked down and I'm in denial. But I think I got pushed and it hit my head in the second round. Well, it was a really super tough fight, and it went the whole 12 rounds. But so in the second round, I went down and hit my head on the canvas badly. And then I remember sitting in between rounds, and my trainer's yelling at me in the corner, and he's screaming in my face. And I look past my trainer, and I see the fighter that I'm fighting, and he's got some cuts over his eyes, and so he's not looking in very good shape either. And then the ring card girl comes around. She's carrying the 12 around. So I'd only remembered up to the second round, and then I
Wow.
remembered a little bit of the 12th, and then I faded out until they announced the decision. So
Whoa.
those kind of things do happen, and again, I never even got checked for it.
Wow. What's that? So, like, going back over a couple of your fights, I mean, you're not holding back, right? Like, this isn't a hockey fight. Or, I mean, what was the your gloves like? What were you using back then?
Well, back then, In the amateurs, we used like 10-ounce gloves. 10-ounce gloves. They were a little bit differently padded. The pro gloves, like they're usually brand new when you wear them on a fight basis. So you get you have quite a bit of hand wraps on. You get your fist into these gloves, and when you make a fist, it's hard.
Right.
It's hard, very hard, and it doesn't take too much to actually get your bell rung. Just a little shot on the temple. You sometimes see fighters that seem a little bit more hurt than what the punch seemed to look like. But
Right.
with those hard gloves, and yeah, it's just they can just ding you, and it doesn't take too much to uh, uh, to start hurting you and putting some damage on you, marking you up all in the eyes. So yeah, so I used 8-ounce gloves in the pros, and then once you get up to about a certain weight class, then you go up into 10-ounce weight, 10-ounce gloves.
Okay.
The heavyweights have.
Now, how do you you're talking about cuts and stuff, and everybody, you got to have a good cut man, good corner man.
Right.
This. How do you in between fights from getting stitched up and stuff like this? How do you prepare for that the next round or the next time you go fight? Or is that just going to open right back up and that's going to be that, and this is the way it is?
Yeah, well, they certainly can be a reminder to get the way next time. So sometimes you're a little bit more fearful of it happening, and sometimes your defense just isn't up to par, and you're going to get hit with everything but the kitchen sink, and you're going to get your eyes diced up a little bit. But for myself, my eyes didn't cut so much as they swelled up shut, so I wouldn't be able to see anything. My eyes would swell up shut, and
Wow.
which is kind of worse than a cut. At least with your when you have a cut eye, you might get some blood in your eye that might impair your vision. But when your eyes close shut or close tight, and you just can't see out of it, so you don't even have a chance to see out of that eye. And back when I was fighting, my last fight was like 20 years ago. So seems not like that long ago, but it has been. And uh, you
Was
know,
that what was his name? Carbajal?
oh yeah, I fought one of the guys at Carbajal.
Carbajal, yeah. Was that your last fight?
No, no, he ended up fighting me, and that was a tricky one because I was so fat. I had some surgeries like over my eyes and a couple on my knee, and they offer me the fight. I'm saying, right on, he'll finally fight me. And, but then I couldn't even make 112 pounds to maintain my world championship. I had to drop to 108. And man, I'll tell you, I was so skinny. I don't know how I still it's astounding that I made weight for that. But anyway, but Carwall, yeah, he was fought him. He's in the international.
He's tough,
Uh,
eh?
yeah, he's in the international boxing hall of fame. He's very good. But I think I fought him at 30%, and if I fought him at 50 or 60%,
Oh
I
wow.
wouldn't.
Okay. Who was your toughest opponent?
Ooh, you know, some are tougher in different ways. Some guys you just can't catch. I fought a couple guys, a Bulgarian that ended up winning Olympic gold medal,
Yeah.
and fought this Bulgarian, and I didn't hit him once in the whole fight. I was in, so I would be in my early 20s, like 20, 21, 22. He was like 35, and I never hit him once in the whole fight. Every time I
Holy.
would miss, they would hit this big gong, and it would make a big noise every time I would miss him. And I was just in tears after the fight. And while so just fight for having not been able to get a hold of him. Then he had a big beer and a cigarette. Eat me.
You're kidding. It's
So
almost like a
yeah.
Guy Lafleur when the boys playing hockey back in the day. They'd be drinking and smoking in between periods, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'll bring
A
back
lot
those
of
days. I
difference.
love those days. Well, so what I kind of
Yeah.
um, I mean, gold medal, right? You cherish that. That was what, in '86 Commonwealth Games?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Who do you remember how you had to fight to get to get to the gold? Like as you're moving
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Well, I fought first guy I fought. I think I actually had a. Usually, I draw the number one fighter in the whole tournament. If that fighter wasn't me, I'd be fighting the second best guy. Usually in a tournament, but this time I had a draw. I think a bye for my very first one, so I didn't have to fight the first one, and then the second fight I fought Ireland. He was a really a tough nut, really a tough nut, and I stopped him. I think I stopped him in the first round. I guess it would have been might have been the second round, but his name was Johnston Todd, and then I was to fight for the gold medal against Mark Epton, and he was from England, and he was just like he was just such a busy fighter, just a wrecking machine. Somebody that if you weren't in the top shape, it would be hard to keep up with him and keep up with his punch volume. But I was able to knock him down a few times, and so I ended up winning the fight. I think it was probably a split decision, or could have been unanimous, but it was a very close fight. Yeah, no, those were the fights that I had in
Yeah.
Edinburgh, Scotland.
I know, right?
I was fighting those guys in Edinburgh, and I was fighting, and then I fought Scotland in a different tournament, and yeah, so
Right. Is there typically a country that just like year after year just besides the states, I suppose, but
yeah.
is there a country out there that they're just so tough, like Russia or something like that?
Well, they're tough in the Orient when they get into the lower weight classes, like my weight
Oh,
class. In the Orient, like Korea, they're very just a tough people. They were tough people, and they grew up and they grew up pretty hard. Cuba is a really hard one to beat. I
yes.
fought a few Cubans, and I never actually beat one. I tried so hard. I fought one world champion in the Pan American Games
Mhm.
in '87, and I lost a decision. I couldn't hit him. I didn't hit him in the whole fight, and it was just so frustrating because I would go for broke. But I was like running into the ropes, and didn't I was making it look very good for Team Canada, But if he had just stood still for a minute and cooperated, I would have got him.
If he just would have cooperated, let me hit him. I would have got him.
Yeah.
That's got to be on a T-shirt somewhere. Just stop and let me hit you and cooperate. So I'll win this thing and get out of here. That's awesome. Um, do you watch boxing today? Or are you just done with it?
There's parts of me that's kind of done with it, but I do watch some of the fights. Usually, what's been keeping me on more active, or less active at first, because when I retired from boxing, I started to sell cars. And
Right.
that sort of became my whole life for about 12 years. And so I just really let go of the boxing, and I wasn't hanging out at the gyms or anything, or I wasn't helping anybody. I wasn't giving anything really back. So it wasn't until, let's see here. So the right when the boxing's, I'm just trying, hopefully I don't lose my track here.
No, it's all good.
Uh, I lost. Sorry about
Yeah, no,
that.
no, 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 no. It's all good. So, when you got out of the selling cars, you got back. You started going back into gyms and teaching kids and stuff.
Yeah. So after I got out of the car sales stuff, which happened right after my cardiac arrest, so that
Right.
kind of
15.
tired me. So then I started to go down to the gym a little bit. I had lost my middle brother, so he had passed away, and then I was able to go to the gym and work with Ryan Ford a little bit. And he's the son of Alan Ford, who was the man who got me into boxing in the first
Wow.
place. So it's kind of came around in a big circle, and
Yeah.
Ryan allowed me to help him. So I became a little bit more involved with boxing again. Uh, and watching some of the fights, because now I get to do some Zoom things, and now I get asked to do some shows
Yeah.
and comment on certain things, and so I have to be a little bit more abreast of the situation.
What's going on? You know,
Of the fights.
when I was younger, I guess I'm growing up with Hagler, Hearns, all that. I mean, it's like you watched it all. It's just like you knew every division, you knew every fighter, you knew the heavyweights. Today, champ, I don't know who's who. I've this whole what's that? That's that YouTube guy, whatever his name is. Like he's making a mockery. He's taking the piss out of this, isn't he? Like it's. What do you think of that these guys?
Sort of that Jake Paul kind
Jake
of
Paul, yeah. What do you think? Is that
yeah.
does that irritate you?
The only part that kind of irritates me is
How much money they're making?
that's the, you took the words out of my mouth there, because
Yeah.
that's the one that hurts the most, considering how hard so many of us fighters have trained and prepared, and and the sacrifices that were made to then have a YouTuber
I know.
who isn't a fighter per se, so
No.
and make the money doing what we do.
Did what
You
did
know,
how much did you make? What do you think? And you don't have to answer that. It's a bit personal,
yeah.
but in your in your prime for the what did because
No, I was making, I was always one fight short of getting into $1 million fight.
oh
But so that's where the judges came in, and I lost my first fight, and that should have been my fight, and then I lost my second fight, and that one cost me, the first loss cost me over $1 million for my next fight, and then the second one cost me about 700,000 on the second loss, because
wow.
I put myself back up, and then lost again to with judges that were corrupt.
Wow. And there's a lot of that. I have a friend on Facebook, Marianne Laurie. Do you know Marianne at all? She's out in Vegas and she does a
Yes, I do.
yeah. And
Wow.
yeah, I know, small world we have, eh? Like
Yes.
but um she she's very cautious to talk about it. Sometimes you can get it out of her, but I don't think people really understand like what the purists that watch boxing. Like I love the sport. I could never do it. However, I'm like yourself. When I see some wackadoo, some yin yang on there, calling people out and stuff like that, and then making multiple millions of dollars. It just, it's not good for the sport, I don't think, and it's too, it's just too. I don't know. I just don't like it. But I got to ask you, and this is, I'm dead serious about this question. In your opinion, in Mike Tyson in his prime, and Muhammad Ali in his prime, who would win that?
Well, when you take a look at who Ali had beaten, he lost a few fights. He did lose a few fights. It was in the single digits, but he lost a few. Uh, Mike is a wrecking machine. I just love him so much. He's such a great fighter. But in a fight between them, you know, I've heard Mike Tyson comment, and he knows, um, of course, knew Muhammad Ali and knew a lot of his fights, knows boxing history inside out. So Mike Tyson had said that Ali was the greatest,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I guess I would have to pick him over Tyson, because he ended up Muhammad Ali ended up getting through George Foreman, ended up beating style like fighters like Joe Frazier, but Tyson was one of my favorites,
It's so fun to watch.
fighters, one of my favorite fighters of all time, and I put him on a pedestal. But to Ali, I think he would even admit that Ali would probably
Win.
take a little bit, yeah.
But only because you've just stated a couple times you fought a couple guys you couldn't even touch. You didn't hit them once, right?
Yeah.
So you can't put something down which you can't hit. So probably that's the way it would go. I mean, since we're talking about Ali, we cannot. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention Chevalo. Like, do you know the man? Have you met the man?
Yes, I know George. Yes. I was down there about a year ago in Toronto, and it was so nice. I was there for there was another fighter from there named Eddie Mello, and he had passed away.
Yeah.
And they do an Eddie Mello Legacy Organization boxing fights that they have some amateur fighters come in and yeah, it's just a really good time. So I got to do karaoke with George. I had part of it on one of my on my phone. So I got him doing a little bit of karaoke, and he's just what an icon. Like
he truly is underrated, I think, as far as in the boxing community. Absolutely. You mentioned his name. Anybody that's boxed, anybody that knows the game would not have the, he's one of the most outstanding boxers, and certainly in Canada, I would have to say. But I think there was a quote from Muhammad Ali who said, there was this Canadian guy, and he hit like a freight train. And his name was George Chevalo from Cabbagetown or something. I do remember Ali saying something to that effect. So, if it's coming from him, hello, right?
Yeah.
He went through a bit of a tragedy, his life, though, isn't it?
Yeah. He had some of his, I'm not speaking for him, but I'm sure it's okay that he had a couple of his kids die of drug overdoses or just from using.
Right.
So that was really hard for him.
Yeah, he went through so many tragedies, but he's still standing. Yeah. Well, let's talk about a couple of. I don't know if you know this guy. He's a local guy here. His name is Donnie Orr. Donnie Boy Orr. Do you know Donnie?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not like we hang out or anything,
No.
but I know of Donnie. Yeah.
Okay. And what about Billy Irwin?
Oh yeah. Billy friends. I came up just a little bit the Olympics before him, so I was in '88 and he sort of came on to the Olympics in '92. So I was already 23-0 with 18 by knockout by the time he turned pro. So, but he's a great cat. I love. Just a lot of excitement watching him. He was really methodical about. He placed his punches. He took time and he placed. There's something to be said about just swinging and trying to hit a guy. But when you're placing your punches in the right spot and have that patience and the timing and I guess overall experience and when you start touching those targets that you need to touch to be a successful fighter, Billy does all of that.
Yeah, Sean O'Sullivan was another fighter that was very technical, wasn't he? He was. Fast, really fast.
Yes, he threw a lot of punches and he gave up. His defense wasn't as tight. It wasn't as tight as it could have. I guess he was just a warrior, and he would go to war with everybody, and he'd be throwing punches, and you'd usually rely on his toughness, his ability to take a punch, plus the punches he was dishing out were hard and fast. What a talent! It's. I think what Canada should be doing is giving him, $500,000 and just in thanks for doing so much for Canada in terms of the boxing sport.
That is a really good point. But there's always, there seems to be, I don't know, it's with boxing, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean any disrespect, but there just seems to be tragedy that follows into the boxing. I mean, with the Hiltons and the stuff. I mean, how talented were those boys?
Oh. tough, tough boys. Like the one I know the most is Matthew. Because he trained and fought here in Edmonton when I fought on the Kenny Lacusta George Foreman undercard. So he fought on the undercard as well. So Matthew Hilton, that guy's a wrecking machine. You watch it, he was hitting this heavy bag, and after he was done hitting the heavy bag, I wound up and hit it a couple times. I didn't even move the bag, and I can punch.
Yeah.
Never underestimate my punching ability. But what Matthew Hilton would do, he was making that heavy bag, man,
sway back and forth.
Oh my God. Punching it out, just killer punches. Davey was a very good fighter. And they always say that Stuart Hilton, who was the youngest one that had passed away when he was pretty close to 17, 18, somewhere in that range. And I've heard a lot of comments that he was probably one of the more gifted fighters of all the Hilton fighters.
I've actually heard that too, and it's just, it seems like we have some hockey. The Courtnalls are out here, and two of them, obviously, one's Stanley Cup winner, one isn't. But apparently, the older brother was better than them all. It's just never made it. And the Sutter brothers, I think there's 400 of them bouncing around. But the one that was the best out of all of them stayed on the farm, and so it's very common to have when you have. Family lineage like that the one that really doesn't get the notoriety was the one that was the best out of them all. So now what I want to move on to, we're talking about punches and stuff like that, and one of the things that I've noticed, and I like the technical part of boxing. I mean, you wouldn't want to fight a boxer on the street. Like just some average Joe. But is it knowing how to punch? Is it knowing how to take a punch? Like, do you know if you square up with somebody right away, their weaknesses immediately? Do you see that immediately?
Yeah, it does. For the most part, fighters, if they have some experience, let's talk about pro fighters. So you're a pro fighter. And you take punches in the head all day long. That's one thing. So you're accustomed to taking a shot. You're accustomed to throwing shots. Where your average person just doesn't. They're not designed to do that. They're just not designed. So you hit one of these guys with a little bit of power, like a boxer will throw a proper punch. And chances are the other guy's going to get hurt. What is
Scotty? What is a proper punch? Can you describe the proper punch?
Well, there's so many types of punches. So if you're, from my point of view, my favorite punches are have to do with the harder ones. That means you're fully committing yourself to the punch, because you can't be making a punch and bringing your arm back and snapping your arm back because you're worried about getting hit right away. That's not committing to a punch. When you just put your whole body into it, you transfer your weight, you have your hip and your shoulder turning, and you max yourself out, and then you come back with another hook is even more powerful than the first shot. It's mostly just that transfer of weight, in my opinion. Transfer weight. And balance helps, because you can't throw a damn thing off balance.
No.
So most punchers are pretty heavily footed.
That's why drunk people don't fight. They make good fights. What about the body shot? Like, it's one of those things that you know when you hit somebody in the body, like I'm watching boxing and you know, you're like, oh boy, that's gonna hurt.
There's just sometimes you can get hit on the left side of the body pretty much all night, and well, it might play a little factor later in the fight, just that you're getting hit on the side, but it's on the right side of your body, uh, lower down. Anyway, that's where your liver is. So when you touch that liver, it doesn't matter like how many sit-ups you do. What when you get touched there, just
Is it immediate? Is it immediate?
yeah. That was the shot that stopped me when I fought Michael Carbajal.
Yep.
And I threw a right hand, and because I was so tired, my right hand, he wasn't worried about it hurting him too much. So he threw a body shot at the same time I threw my right hand, and so the left body shot to my right side, and oh my God, I knew that. I've fought in Brave many a times, but I decided to call it a night.
Did you? That was it?
Yeah, that was it. I was so tired. I got into the 10th round of a 12-rounder, and I'm surprised I even made it past 6. I remember in that fight, I'm sort of in the fight, and I'm not wanting to take a look at the rounds. I'm not going to keep track of the rounds so that the rounds go by faster for me.
Yeah.
It seemed like I fought all night, like dead tired. Finally, I look up and the ring card girl's carrying a 6. Like, this is going to take forever.
It's like being in school and you're like, oh, it's got to be 2:00 by now, and it's like 10 after 9. You're like, oh shit, there we go.
Yeah, the six came around, and I made it another like 3.5 or 4 rounds into the 10th round before I got hit with this body shot. But I was not strong enough to get up.
Wow.
So then, and just really paralyzing when delivered properly.
So that fight there, do you remember what you would have earned in that fight there? Like, was it?
Yeah, that wasn't a very big one. That was the good part about that fight, and what I made was because we had a good exchange rate. So that fight, it was only a $50,000 fight. It was supposed to be $250,000-$300,000 fight by that time, but I had a couple losses, which I guess the promoters say that you lose some of your earning potential when you lose a fight, and then you got to build yourself back up. So it was supposed to be $1 million fight when I fought him the first time. But I got 50,000, and then if we transferred it into Canadian dollars, that worked out to be 80,000. So that was a little bit better, But yeah, it was far off the mark. We had been built up to be making the first $1 million flyweight fight together, and when I lost my first fight, that kind of nixed that idea, and I couldn't get him to fight me any other time.
Was that first one? Was that the one you were referring to? You lost by decision?
Yeah, my first loss, I was the United States champion, and I defended it against a tough kid from Mexico, who looked like he was chasing parked cars around. His face was he looked like a fighter, the ultimate fighter. And like nobody else wanted to fight him, and I said, "Yeah, I'll fight him." So that's why I took a run at him, and it beat me by a majority decision. And I should have got like at least a draw or
a win.
At a draw, then I would have gone into the $1 million fight.
Right.
So, and then that would have after that, I would have been making some serious money. But it's too hard for me to get down to 108 pounds. Yeah, I could barely make 112 pounds to have my title. So yeah, it's but then again, there weren't people lining up around the block to take a run at me.
No.
A lot of these champions, they just weren't.
Dodge it.
Number 2 in the world, number one contender gets a mandatory shot to fight it at the title. I'm number two in the world, strategically kind of placed there. So I'm number two in the world for a long time. And I'm trying to get this fight with Dave McCauley from Ireland on a big event that we could put together between us and them. And and then he's ducking me. I've got two or three other champions after that didn't fight me, and I wanted to fight them, and that they wouldn't fight me. So it was just getting a little bit frustrating.
Well, that's because you're too much of a risk, I guess. I mean, they have a good possibility of losing to you, right? Mm-hmm. So, but isn't it structured, champ? Isn't it structured where that shouldn't happen? Where one plays 8, 2 plays 7. It doesn't have that, does it? Like, can you kind of just walk me through the whole ranking and who gets? Well, how do you get to duck a guy? Why is that your choice or his choice?
That's an excellent question. When you get into the top 10, like I entered the top 10. I think they first entered me at about number 8 in the world. That was my first time I was in the top 10, and I just won the United States Championship. So then I'd had a couple defenses of that, or a defense, or two other fights that I had won, and then I suffered a loss to the Mexican Jose Luis Cepeda. That was a really tough fight. So just help me back to that question.
So I'm just the rankings. Like, how does the rankings all? Like, how does it seems like a dog's breakfast?
Yeah. So I entered the rankings at 8, and there's people above me, but they're not fighting me. They're not shaking me down or trying to get fights with me, and so I'm kind of left out in the dark there a little bit. And so I fought a couple all tough guys that were just alternatively tough, and I suffered a couple losses that I shouldn't have lost.
Right.
And just costing me a ton of money.
That's
I'm sort of glad, because I'm not so sure how much of that I would have kept. I might have had some fun for a while.
Can you walk me through in the audience?
Yes.
So say you win. Let's just round it off. Say you win $100,000, right?
Yeah.
And it's in the States, so whatever. You get paid in American dollars.
Yeah.
So you have to pay the taxes. How many hands are out after you get back into that dressing room, and how soon after do you get paid, and who pays you, and like how many people do you have to pay out?
Well, sometimes you get a little bonus where they can give you some training expense money, but the only training expense money that I got for, let's say, paying for sparring partners, your cut man on fight night, you usually I'm just trying to say, help me out one more time.
Yeah, it's just, I'm wondering just the pay structure, champ. I wonder who do you got to pay? Do you pay him, or do you hire somebody to pay him, or?
Yeah. So sometimes you have you have the ability to get a little bit of money in your pocket, a little bit of a fund, sort of just to handle some of your bills,
right,
up to a fight. But usually that comes off your. Usually for me, my experience, it comes off my right from my top number. So if it's 100,000, 10% off the top goes to your trainer. Now you're at 90%. So 33 and a third percent of 90, it comes out to like 60. So if you're paying taxes or however it's done off of about that 60 number, and if you have to pay sparring partners, which I did have to pay for because nobody wanted to get hit by me. So I had to pay them to get a little bit. So that would come. That would be another decrease, and there would be, and but I had fun. When we'd all go out, it would be me. I would pay for supper I paid for stuff, and I was springing. I was making some money, and I was springing, and I felt good to help a lot of my friends
Yeah.
that were around at that time.
Yeah. Um, did you ever did you ever have that status? I'm sure you did. That where you go, oh, it's the Bulldog. He's in for dinner. This is on us, champ. Did you get that at all, or free drinks or
Oh, yeah.
anything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's icing on the cake stuff. I really enjoyed those times in my career. Do they, they recognize me now sometimes depending on their age.
Yeah.
They're over 40 or 50. Chances are they're going to know who the Bulldog is.
Absolutely.
So chances are.
Yeah.
But these young kids, just so there's just too many generations of come and go. And the
That's
last I fought again was like 20 years ago. So it's if they weren't about 15 or 10 to 15 or 20 by the time I last fought, then chances are it's they just don't know. But anyway, I was more popular like in Edmonton. I was kind of rock starish.
absolutely.
Vegas was a little bit different because it's such a party town too. So I would have I was a little more popular in the States, I found, than I was here. Here, you kind of get maybe taken for granted of a little bit.
We're so it's weird. I'm glad
Because
you brought
you're
that up.
always around.
It's
Yeah, you're always around, and you have all these things. You're always around, so you become so familiarity can breed contempt.
and
So you become so familiar that they don't respect you as much as when you're not in the city as much.
it's but and it's just a Canadian thing, isn't it? It's just like you see a guy like we don't chase celebrities like where I live in Victoria. There's forever shooting movies, and you could see whoever. I wouldn't know who the hell they are today, but it's like I could walk over 10 of them and not know who they are, but or care to be honest. But if I've seen athletes out, and I being in the media, I go to events and you go, oh Jesus, it's that, but I'm not going to go over, and I'm certainly not going to tell them how great he is or how much I like, what I mean. And so, but in the States, I find they're like, woo, hey, so it's just a different culture type thing. And then you met in the Orient and stuff. I've seen over there, and I've talked to other athletes, professional athletes like yourself, and they're like, yeah, you're just beating him off with a stick, right? But I could walk right down Yonge Street in Toronto and hey, fuck you, you lost your last fight, and they're more humble, They're more, they don't remember what you did, they just remember what you lost, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, both places for me, I just tried to remain as approachable as I could.
yeah,
Like here in Edmonton, I'd be as approachable as I could possibly be. I've seen some athletes, and I've seen some athletes right in my hometown not treat fans very, very nicely. And I promised to myself I would never be one of
good for you.
act like that. And down in the States, I would do, I just because while I was down there, I was always on ESPN, so people got familiar with me
Right.
fighting. Las Vegas is a fight town, so yeah, I was getting lot of attention down there too.
Good stuff. I want to circle back to um, you mentioned promoters and stuff like that, and I mean, if something is going to be corrupt, and the fight game over the years has kind of had that stigma attached to it, like, did the Don Kings of this world, did they help the game of boxing?
Well, in some ways, yeah, like Don King.
Did you know him?
And I superficially.
Okay, okay.
I know his son better.
Oh,
I know his son a little bit better. So Don King has made more millionaires in boxing than any other promoter in the world.
oh wow.
It just, uh, which I'm sure that's the case. He's made more millionaires, and being affiliated with having fighters make a substantial amount of money. It just seems he has his own way of collecting some of that money through clauses in contracts. I'm not sure how that's how that exactly works, but they um, sometimes, like Mike Tyson would have to pay for a lot of his training camp stuff, and so it gave Don a bad rap for
Okay.
gave him a little bit of a bad rap for maybe not for keeping more money than maybe he should have.
Right.
I'm not
No, no, no. I just
fingers at the guy.
no, 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 no. So yeah, I kind of it's just always been that that kind of stigma, I guess. He's always kind of been the bad guy of boxing and the whatever. But like until you're actually in the inner circle of how it works, I've noticed it's never the same as what people think he is, and sometimes it's out of jealousy as well, right? So. I
Yeah,
want to move on, champ, to you are a very proud Canadian, very proud Albertan,
thank you.
and it absolutely shows. And our friendship, I know that about you solely. So I a boxer that where I grew up, Bulldog was Lennox Lewis, and he was at a Kitchener,
Hmm.
and he fought in the Commonwealth, and
Yeah.
excuse me, and I genuinely was hurt when he went to England. Like, does stuff like that like stay in your country? This is where I guess he was born there and everything like that. But did that hurt you? Did you have any thoughts on that?
Uh, well, I think a fighter is going to look at it from a little bit of a different point of view. So when I wanted to fight in Canada and turn pro, I tried to form a corporate syndicate of a few companies in my hometown that would provide me an ability to live without having to have a full-time job, but and continue to fight here just in Edmonton. That's all I wanted to have done. And that group said no to me, so I had to make another move, and that's when I went down to Vegas to make it as a fighter
Oh,
because they said no in my hometown. So with Lennox Lewis, having him stay in Canada or winning the gold medal for Canada in boxing and winning it for himself and his family, he did such a great job. Um, I just what was Canada really going to offer him in terms of the sport? If Lennox or Scotty Olson were holding a hockey stick, we'd be rolling in the money. We'd be trying to spend all our money if we could.
I never
But
thought of that. Okay, so it's just did you
Canada wasn't going to do anything professionally really with him. And in the States, I think they would have fed him to the wolves. As turning pro in England, I think he was able to build himself up as a fighter, build up his record, build up his confidence, and get to different levels. And I think I think he would have been maybe mishandled down in the States. So I think it was the best decision for him to go to
okay?
England.
Awesome answer. Good. I want to move on. We gotta wrap up here soon, and I know you're a busy man. Do you have dinner yet? Did have you had? It's what
Yeah.
six
Oh
thirty there?
yeah, I'm all good.
Good, good. um, I want to talk about Donnie Lalonde,
Yes.
and I've met him a couple times, and he has relatives here in Victoria, I believe, and oh man, that was Sugar Ray Leonard, that fight. I was in a nightclub in Galt, Ontario, or Cambridge, whatever they call it now, but
Yeah.
um, he had him. He had him. Did he not?
Oh yeah. Oh, it was a good shot. He always had that shot too. Just had a really good ability to hit hard with that right hand, and his left hook was no joke. So, but his right hand was predominantly the stronger one, I think, of the two, and he then clocked Ray Leonard. So yeah, and that was Ray. Has just so much experience,
Oh,
so experience of maybe not getting hurt all the time, but he had a lot of experience to know what to do in the event that he got hurt. So he was able to kind of bypass and go, you know, extend the fight for himself.
Do you think that do you think Donnie let him up? Do you think it was a little bit of a oh geez, I didn't like do you think it shocked him that he knocked an icon like him down?
I don't think it shocked Donnie. I think it excited him. I
Okay.
think very excited. I just you know, when you're fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, you know, I fought a couple of really tough top grade fighters too. And, you know, even when they're hurt, some of these guys are a little bit hard to hit, you know, and even if they're hurt, they're hard to hit, and they just have that experience, and they'll have will to win, and they're not going to give up, and they that's why they're champions.
Right. What would that have meant?
Keep them down.
What would that have meant to Donnie if he would have won that fight? Like, woulda, coulda, shoulda, I get it. But what would that have meant? Now I know what, you know, a couple of your fights, you were just that one fight away. If he would have beat Ray Leonard, would there be Ray Leonard 2?
Oh, I think there would have had to be. Yeah, I think there would have had to be a second fight, and you know, potential trilogy stuff depending on how the second fight went. You know, Donnie. You know, I look up to him. I think he's just a great fighter, great guy. I, you know, I just if you're talking about that, the like just the Sugar Ray Leonard fight. Um, I'm just not so sure. Uh, I don't know. I'm at a crossroads here, thinking if they would have done a rematch,
Okay.
there would have been a rematch clause in it. But Ray Leonard uh, had see this fight was at 175. It was at the light heavyweight for Donnie's light heavyweight title, but Donnie had to come in a little bit underweight. I think he had to come in at 168, so that put him at a deficit. But this was Sugar Ray Leonard, who was a 147-pound fighter, moving up to 168 or 170. So he was up there a little ways. So, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Donnie could have hurt him. Could have hurt him really badly.
But it would have been a good payday, right? It would have been a really good payday moving forward in his career if he would have beat Ray Leonard.
Oh, yeah, financially,
Yeah.
that would have been a big step, and it would have probably put him in line for another big fight to unify uh, the light heavyweight championship of the world. Donnie was WBC light heavyweight champion of the world. So when you're that champ, you know that's the money belt that you have. So he could have fought maybe Michael Spinks in a title eliminator to sort of to try to be undisputed champion. So it would have opened him up to another couple more fights for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he pass away, Spinks?
Donnie Lalonde?
No, not Donnie. No, not Donnie. But Spinks.
Oh no, Michael. Well, Michael Spinks was light heavyweight champion of the world, and Leon Spinks has passed.
Leon. I'm sorry. Okay, I remember Marianne. She, there was a post or something that I watched. It was kind of touching. It was kind of sad to see him later on in his life with the walker and stuff. But yeah, I do. Yeah, he did. It wasn't that long ago, was it?
Wasn't very long ago.
Yeah.
No.
What a hell of a fighter, eh?
6 months. Yeah, I mean, to have 7 professional fights, fight Muhammad Ali for the World Heavyweight Championship of the world, and win.
Yeah, no kidding.
Pretty unreal.
Yeah. Kind of moving. I kind of just want to wrap up with. Do we have any good boxers coming up that you know of who we should be looking out for? Like, is there somebody on the forefront that's just about there?
Mm-hmm. You know, there are some fighters that are in Quebec and Ontario, and I would be remiss to
Yeah.
remember all of their names. But here locally, we still have. She hasn't, I don't think, decided to retire, but Jelena Marjinovic. So she is still fighting, and she's still a world champ, at least one of the world champs. She's held various belts throughout her illustrious career. So I think we will probably see her fight again. Hopefully, this kind of leading on into next year. Ryan Ford, he's the real deal. So Ryan Ford, he's my friend, and
what's his weight class?
yeah, he's a super middleweight, so he's one class below light heavyweight, but he fights between super middleweight and heavyweight. So he'll fight anybody. He'll fight anybody.
Kind of
so
like you, right?
Yeah, well, me too. Yes, I pride myself in that. But Ryan, he's off to Poland, so he's in training camp right now in Toronto, Montreal, and then he'll be going to Poland to fight for an intercontinental fight.
Nice.
Intercontinental fight kind of thing. And so he has a good chance to win this one, and we're all pulling for him here.
That's awesome.
All prominent fighters that, yeah. And there are a few kids that have just turned pro here in Edmonton. It's kind of, I think that the fans are going to be able to see them once in a while on the same sort of shows,
right?
And hopefully that they can develop their own favorites from the group. Carlito and Rafael Santoro are here in my hometown in Edmonton. So I like how I said that, my hometown.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So Carlito and Rafael Santoro, they just won some belts. They're pretty much rated top in Canada right now in their respective divisions.
Okay, so the boxing's looking good, like in the future, right? So, and certainly in Alberta, anyways. Well, listen, Bulldog, I could talk to you for hours. Let's be honest, and I'll have to have you back on again. But it's been an honor and a privilege, my friend, to speak with you tonight, and I can't thank you enough for doing our little show here. So, again, just all the best to you and your family, and let's definitely keep in touch. And I'll say a big shout out from Howie Mace and Greg Mace and the boys to you. Yeah, awesome. Well, Bulldog, Scotty, thanks, buddy. I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk again real soon.
You got it. Thanks for the opportunity. Great show.
Awesome. Thanks, Scotty. All right. Well, folks, that's a wrap with the one and only Scotty the Bulldog Olson. Just a great guy. Just a great guy. So that's it for another episode of Raw Sportscast. Thanks for joining, and I'll bring you on to the next one. Good night.